In 1973, Johnny Taylor performed a song. Some of these lines still describe my existence today. When your little child irritates you and you become angry, pack your luggage. You're leaving 5 tiny children behind, son. You're going to pay alimony or serve some time. That's why keeping her costs less. Help me say it, everyone. It is cheaper to keep her. Damn, he was absolutely right. It's cheaper to keep her. I own my own business and she did not work, so alimony was expected. I had 2 girls that I adored more than my own life. So there was child support and the sorrow of never seeing them. Plus, if she really wanted to get nasty, she could take half of my business instead of alimony. I'd have to subsist on roughly 30% of my earnings. I left the lawyer's office feeling depressed as usual. Charlene was approximately 3 steps ahead of me when I caught up. I've been doing it for 8 months and it has not hurt us. He's a great lover, nor better nor bigger, simply different. I don't think I'd be able to pick between you. However, before taking any action, think carefully. Consult a lawyer. Your life would be a horrible horror. If we parted, I'd make certain of it. I stared at her as she sat quietly on the couch, explaining my new existence. Who was this woman? She definitely wasn't my wife. The woman I had been with for 14 years. I relied on and trusted the woman more than I did myself, more than anyone in my entire life. At least I won't have to sneak around anymore. You'll still get the lion's share of my attention and affection. But I will not neglect Jim. He has needs, just as you do. I'll plan a schedule. That's all I heard before standing up and walking out. She followed me, wailing until we were outdoors, but then stopped when she saw Mrs. Roseman, the nice old lady who lived 2 houses down. I smiled and nodded as Charlene hissed and returned to the home. "Get your buttocks in here now!" She watched me drive away. I was gone 2 days. When I returned, her sneer nearly caused me to turn around. The girls were all over me, and I cuddled with them till sleep. They were 13 and 11 years old and growing up quickly. After meeting with the lawyer, I made the decision to bite the bullet for now. She gave me some beer. I placed it on the table once they were asleep. Damn if I'd ever drink anything she offered me again. I am delighted you came to your senses. I knew you would. We will continue as before, and no one will know. The only thing that will change is that I will be on a date 1 night per weekend and will return home quite late. But I'll be home, so don't worry about the girls. She sat back, the familiar smug expression on her face. I quickly removed that expression from her face with the speech I had prepared. Who said I had come to my senses? Here's what will happen. I'll be around for the next 4 years and 8 months until Marissa turns 18. Then I am gone. Darcy will be just over 16, so she will be able to cope. I hope she chooses to live with me. Either way, I'll be gone. I paused for a breather and resumed before she could react. Sloppy seconds are no longer an issue for me. Even if you dropped the pig tomorrow, I would not share your bed. That has vanished forever. I make a point of not sleeping with bitches, and a lady who has sex with other guys while married is exactly that. I am moving into the spare bedroom and there will be no more discussion about it. However, I do not intend to remain celibate. I have my own needs, and while I will not go hunting for them, at least for the time being, I will not refuse them if they are presented to me. Unless she is married, I will never do to another unfortunate creature what you are doing to me. Also, you should find a job or have your lover pay for your necessities. The daughters can have whatever they want, but anything above their living expenses will never be deposited into our joint checking account. I knew it was going to be hard. Charlene never seen a sale. She did not like her closets. Yes, in the plural. There are clothes in them she has never worn. She had become paler with time, but she was now furious. You decide. Why aren't you getting with the program? I still love you and would like to share your bed. This is completely ludicrous. Things will continue just as they are. This isn't an option. Now go prepare for bed. I plan to screw you till you can't get it up anymore. Tell me whether you would ever turn this down. She rushed up and dropped her son's dress, leaving only thigh-highs and 5-inch heels. I examined her up and down. She was a stunning woman, especially considering her age and the fact that she had 2 children. If this lover thing doesn't work out for you, you'd be popular at Patterson in Maine. Consider it when you run out of play money. That was the street corner in our small town where guys went to meet potential dates for the night. She plucked her dress from the floor, sputtering with wrath. Okay, if that's the way it goes, just remember that 3 months later, when you come wailing around for pity sex, I'll make you lick his juice out of me first, since it'll always be full. She dashed off to her bedroom, making careful to lock the door. I gave her a few minutes before kicking it open. She was on the bed, holding her phone. She dropped the phone out of fear, and I knew who she was talking to and grabbed it. Hello, dipshit, I've got your number now. I will shortly have your address. Maybe I'll look you up sometime and we can talk about what we have in common. Do not be concerned that I will injure you. I believe that having my bitch of a wife is sufficient punishment. You wouldn't want to be in a long-term relationship with her if you knew she would cheat on her partner. He hung up the first time an opportunity presented itself, so I placed the phone in my pocket. She had recovered from her battle and was ready to go when the girls arrived. They stared at the fractured door case and wondered what had happened. Oh, you know, this door has been sticking recently. I believe it is drawing moisture. I will fix it tomorrow. You folks should go back to bed. Charlene hadn't said anything when they departed. She started in, but I stopped her. I will keep your phone until tomorrow. And yes, I will check your account on the computer. Have a pleasant night, she hissed at me as I left. Good luck with it. I have my accounts more securely guarded than Fort Knox. You won't get anything at all, I smiled, knowing she had forgotten the keystroke recorder. We placed it on the computer. As soon as the kids were old enough to use it, I locked myself in the den, triggered it, and the printer was up and running. I had to add paper, but I got all her emails, searches, and purchases from the previous year. She was about as foolish as it gets. He talked her into lingerie shots that I'd never seen on her before. Then came the nudes, which featured a 10-minute film in which she screwed herself with a big toy, as well as a few photos of himself and nudes. But I hit the jackpot when I watched the video of him jerking off and spouting nonsense about what they were going to do the next time they got together. It was bound to become viral at some point. At least she didn't lie about her size. He looked similar to me. It saddens me little. She could have at least swapped up. Better yet, he worked for the county as a permission supervisor. They had met when Charlene went to get the permission for my workshop, which was a code name for man cave. When the estrogen in the house became too intense, I would retreat to there and shoot pool or watch sports on the 50-inch television. I even had cable connected during football season. It was truly a man cave because the majority of the neighbors came over to watch with me. The fact that the spouses enjoyed, for the most part, required her to return again when I added things, which led to flirtation, coffees, lunches, and sex. It didn't appear that she resisted him very hard. In a few occasions, she took the initiative. I locked all of the prints, transferred the photos and movies to my own office computer, and went to bed, sleeping surprisingly soundly. I was up happy, or so it appeared to the girls, and I made breakfast while they spoke about schoolboys, music, and males. Which boy band was the cutest overall? Which boy band produced the finest songs? It all blended together, and I just disregarded it. After all, they were too young to be serious about anything. Thank God. Marissa, the 13-year-old, was beginning to develop, and males noticed. We were allowing her to go out in groups monitored by one parent or another. Of course, they'd pair off, and we let them, as long as they didn't act foolishly. We did it in the hopes that when kids were old enough to date, they'd have some experience to fall back on and wouldn't do anything crazy. Darcy, or Echo as we named her. Because, as Marissa stated, she was a little too young at 11 to participate in these activities, but we made sure there were plenty of supervised opportunities for them to socialize. All of this was in addition to sports practices, dance courses, band, and acting school. One car or the other was always on the move. They were discussing their afternoon plans when I dropped the first ball. I'm sorry, ladies, but I've taken up some new responsibilities at work, so Mom will be your primary chauffeur for a bit. Because she doesn't work, I'm confident she can be there for you, right? If looks could kill, I would have been a blazing pile of ash. Instead, she told the girls that they might have to ride with their pals occasionally. Why? What could be more important than leaving your children to bomb rides if you have entire morning to do anything, right, girls? They agreed immediately. Yeah, Carol's mother is scary, and Jenny's father looks at us. Please, Mom. Charlene was stuck and irritated until they departed. It appears I was correct. Her tiny trysts occurred in the afternoons. Her lover must be working. She started as soon as they boarded the bus. If you think, there you go. That is the difference between you and me, I think. Typically, it is with a large head. All of your brain activities lately appear to be focused between your legs inside that hole. Better start using your brain instead while you still have the chance with your kids. Finally, before I left, I got the house wired for sound and video. Bring the hole here, and it will be on the internet within an hour. Damn, the consequences are ruining my day. She was still trying to communicate when I left for lunch. I played the footage, watching as she yelled, ranted, and attempted to locate the cameras. Good luck with it. Even I wasn't sure where they were. The guy who put it in for me offered that if I knew, I could give them out. However, I did get to listen to a fascinating phone call. Actually, there are several of them. The first was for her partner. He's being a complete jerk baby. He ruined our afternoons and has threatened to withhold the money. I checked this morning and he has canceled all of my cards. Our bank balance is $280, and a $200 power payment is due today by automatic draft. We may have to switch to Plan B. He was uneasy with Plan B, whatever it was. Before we pursue that path, let's give him a few days to calm down. If we leave them now, I'll be just as guilty as hubby. Thus, we won't gain anything. Keep trying to screw in, baby. It always calms me down. Maybe give up on the back door stuff. I know I've broken it in pretty good by now. Apparently, it was not the response she was hoping for. So much for love. Your solution is to let him screw me in the buttocks. How in the hell am I expected to accomplish that? Say, honey, I was thinking, how about you give me a good? But drilling Bob has prepared me well, so don't worry about injuring me, you stupid. He'd know you'd been there as soon as I said it, and things would really deteriorate. I'm getting the impression that your professed undying love for me is nonsense, he complained angrily. I adore you, but let us be sensible. We dump our marriages. Everyone will understand why we will be broke. You do not have a job, and mine is not worth bragging about. This continues until we pull the trigger. We live in nice residences. You're getting everything you desire, even me. We need to take it slow here. I know he fouled up your afternoons, but we could meet at lunch. It won't be great, but it'll get us through. Where might we meet? He cut me off, so I can't pay for a motel stay. And I'm not taking advantage of you at work. Let's do it at your home. We will screw in your bed and leave the linens with wet patches for him to see. Not a good idea. I can't locate anything, but he claims he has wired the house. And if we meet here, we'll be on the amateur hot side in less than an hour. I believe him. No, we'll just have to stop and allow him time to settle down. Screw your wife for a change. At least you won't be without anything. I got a little heated after that, and as they hung up the phone, she sat there, puzzled. Perhaps the perfect existence she envisioned was suffocated by reality. I knew her, however, and knew that once she made a decision, hell would freeze over before she modified it. She was so stubborn. I smiled as I checked on her later. She was at the computer, just realizing I had locked her out. "You pig!" she shouted after approximately 15 minutes. "Asshole." She went through the list of swear words. I was slightly impressed. I had no clue she knew so many. I decided to tease her a little and called her. Before she could speak, I began chatting. "Hello, honey," I replied, my words dripping with sarcasm. "Do you had a good day? You can cease using the computer to cite your words. I have it locked up tighter than Fort Knox. Here's another tidbit for you. Your phone will be turned off at the end of the day, but don't worry, I've gotten you a new one. It should arrive tomorrow. I hope you enjoyed it." Before I hung up, she said only, "You boss." I heard the whole of it through the surveillance equipment. My techie friend installed cutting-edge technology while she was off screwing Loverboy, shortly after I discovered it. She smiled when I handed her a new high-end phone that evening, and I got to hear her rage in real time the next day when she tried to use it. It has a safety function developed for youngsters that worked exceptionally well for me. She could only contact the kids' schools, my office, my personal cell phone, our physicians, her mother, my parents, and 911. Any effort to contact another number caused the phone to shut down for 30 seconds before rebooting. She discovered that when she attempted to call her partner after the phone reset, I phoned her. "Hi, honey. I'm guessing you figured out by now that the phone only works with preset numbers. It's kind of hard. With no phone or computer to contact your honey, I'd apologize, but unlike you, I don't lie. Now that your days and afternoons are free, I'd like to make a suggestion. Get a job. You'll need it. If you want to shop, I'll get the kids whatever they need. But you are on your own. Perhaps you'll finally wear some of those clothing with the tags still on them." Once again, I hung up before she could begin. Good. It was really cold when I arrived home. She kept her cool and just once approached the girls. She was certain they were asleep, though. We walked into the basement where she shouted and threatened all kinds of horrible things until she ran out of steam. I just grinned through it all and decided to change tactics. She wept. "Honey, please stop being cruel to me. I do not deserve it. Please understand that I did not do this on purpose. It's just happened. He is only a fling. I'm sure we'll grow tired of each other eventually, and I'll return to adoring only you. It did not hurt you until you found out, and it will not hurt you now. It's only a couple hours every week. The rest of the time, I am yours. Totally. Come to bed with me tonight. Let me show you how much I still love you." I believe I stunned her when I laughed. I search up cheating justifications on my computer. One website sells a book called The Cheater's Guide. It provides a variety of recommendations on how to conduct affairs, including one entire section dedicated to damage control. If your husband finds out, you made a lot of excuses and it simply occurred. We won't be affected. It's only a fling. It will be over soon. And the option of having hot sex till he forgets about it. The best one yet threatened to destroy his universe unless he cooperated. I observed as her face was filled with contradictory feelings. I restarted before she could finish speaking. "Let's pause for a moment here. Say I agree with your program. What is in it for me? I still get to pay all of the expenses and do everything that a married person does. The only difference is that I have to share with you. As a businessman, it doesn't seem like a big concern to me, does it? You have the choice of banging someone else while I slog along and wait for you. Not happening. I'll be looking now that you've announced an open marriage. There's this incredibly cute sales lady who comes by once a month, and she's quite the flirt. Good looking, too. And the body on her is incredible. She's a gym rat who runs marathons." She showed me a photo of herself at her previous race, wearing nothing but glorified underwear and a sports bra. Her body is rock solid. She even had the feminine equivalent of a six-pack. I plan to take her to lunch next week and see if she's interested. I know she sees my ring, but let me explain. We have an open marriage, and you have had a lover for about a year. Who knows? She appears to be a liberal type of gal. Besides, now that I look at you, the expense of waiting to utilize your holes isn't worth it, especially knowing that they've been used for kilometers. I knew the shot about the rock-hard body would harm her after 2 children and a few years. She was slightly rounder and softer than she was when we married. Of course, all she had to do was get off her rear and head to the gym instead of the mall. Yes, that was going to happen. She appeared shocked. Why? Why would you need someone else when I am available? You should understand, honey, I still love you, and the notion of you with anyone else makes me unhappy. I handed it right back to her. I've been accessible for 16 years. But this wasn't enough for you, was it? Do you think I jumped for excitement when I discovered you had been cheating on me? There's a term for males who allow their girlfriends to screw other people while remaining faithful. Just as there is a moniker for women who cheat on their spouses, the Bitch Cock Express has officially derailed. Woman might want to think about it. I am going to bed. Right now, at least one of us needs to work. She was still sputtering when I walked out, not a complete imbecile. I realized I needed to make a plan and act quickly before she began attempting to ruin my life. I had an old acquaintance, our neighbor's son, who was socially awkward as a child. We were the only guys on the street, so we naturally gravitated toward each other and eventually became friends. He was mildly autistic, a high-functioning individual who excelled at computer programming and abstract problem-solving. If anyone could solve my problems, it would be him. He had been making computer games since he was 14 years old, selling his first at the age of 16. Now, in his mid-30s, he still lived with his mother and father, and a 10,000 square foot estate was worth more than $60 million. And with the success of his latest game, he was practically raking in the cash. Surprisingly, he was married to another high-functioning autistic, whom I had introduced him to a few years prior at one of the few parties I hosted. She was the daughter of one of my greatest customers, and was usually a recluse. She urged her father accompany her after she had spent the majority of the day at a spa, informing him that something important was about to happen. God was frugal with her brain, but made up for it with her body and face. She was breathtakingly lovely. After looking at my friend Harry, she held his hand and said, "June 17th. He simply nodded and continued speaking with another visitor for a minute before tapping a glass to catch everyone's attention. "Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to invite you to our approaching wedding. The event will take place on June 17th at..." June smiled as she took his hand at Emmanuel Lutheran Church on 2nd Street in Broadville. Harry simply nodded until someone asked him to introduce his bride and explain how they met. He colored slightly as she repeated herself. "My name is June Allison, and we met at a party right here in this house." That was the entire story. She simply didn't inform them. It happened just now at this gathering. She informed him what type of ring she wanted, and the next day he gave her a credit card. She took it from there. They had been together for 8 years. Their kid was 7, and my girls adored her like she was their younger sister. They wished they had. It wasn't unusual for me to arrive home and see a Lexus SUV in the driveway. The driver waited patiently in the kitchen, drinking coffee and talking to Charlie. When I entered, she would smile and begin making sexual innuendos. Shauna was a black, gorgeous ex-military woman who had done 2 combat tours and held black belts in 3 disciplines. She competed on the local law enforcement-sponsored handgun squad and routinely won medals. She formerly worked for me. I thought she was clever and very skilled at her profession, but she seemed bored to tears most of the time. June stopped over one day to talk to me about a social gathering they were planning. She arrived unexpectedly, as was her habit, and I was attending a meeting, so Shauna kept her company. By the time I left the meeting, I had lost an employee. It was a terrific fit for everyone. Shauna moved into the mansion in what was essentially a modest apartment with a separate door, for all of their money. Harry and June didn't get out much, and Shauna was about to quit again due to boredom when some crackhead decided it would be a good idea to abduct a wealthy man's child for money. He was effective for approximately 3 minutes when Shauna blew his head off as he attempted to transport a drugged star off the premises. It got a little tense, but he was armed, and surveillance footage showed him waving the shotgun around while attempting to transport the youngster. They let her leave with a warning, and she became Star's bodyguard/nanny. Charlie frowned every time we flirted after that. All in good fun, of course, and Shauna usually gave me a great hug after they left, crushing her huge chest into me while pulling me up off my feet, which made the girls laugh. The girls did, in fact, accompany them on vacation to exotic locations on several occasions. We were invited, but Charlene always found a reason for us to stay home. When the females returned from an elite resort, I was very delighted by the images, especially those of Aunt Shauna in a thong bikini. The point is that, aside from Charlie, our families were inextricably linked, and I absolutely trusted everyone. Harry was astonished, but June was not. I saw it coming. The past few times I was around her, she seemed distracted, and at our previous gathering, I spotted her in the yard, sitting very close to another attendee. She drew back as I noticed them, and I had the impression I had just missed seeing her kiss him. She nearly raced back inside when she spotted me and clung to you like glue for the remainder of the evening. I wanted to say something, but what? She may or may not have been kissing someone. It was not enough. I recall that night we used to separate at these events, having the opportunity to talk to other individuals. I realized she was missing, but assumed she was in another area of the home until she appeared and stayed by my side for the remainder of the evening. They'd been thinking about my dilemma, and we had a long conversation. "What do you want, Jack?" "I want to maintain my daughters in my life first and foremost. This is the most essential thing for me. Also, I want her to regret her actions. She hasn't realized that yet, but when she does, I fully expect things to get ugly. I don't want to be broke and alone when the dust settles." He nodded and inquired how big my house was. They'd been there long enough to know, but he didn't ask until he had an idea. We had found a great deal on a house in an older community with big lots and beautiful trees. We obtained it for approximately 60% of what it would typically cost because the owner was elderly and didn't take care of it. She received enough from the sale to live out her days in a good retirement community, and I got a 40,400 square foot 2-story house with a full basement. We got it when the girls were quite small, so it was the only home they had ever known. We spent every spare cent we had for 5 years renovating it, and it was now worth more than twice what we had put into it. Charlie adored the place, and I knew she'd do everything she could to keep it. After we divorced, it became clearer when he inquired about the basement. Throughout our house renovations, we had left the basement alone with the nebulous intention of sprucing it up for the daughters to entertain their friends there at a later date. I estimated that the basement was nearly 1,100 square feet. Jack, remodel it, make a lovely apartment out of it. Even install a separate driveway and have it rewired with a different electricity panel. That way, it will be fully separate from the rest of the house when you move in. If you divorce, you keep your home and have full custody of your children. How can she object? Your lives would be entirely separated. You would never be forced to see her if you didn't want to. I don't see a judge with any sense opposing to the idea, especially when it involves children. Why didn't I think of that? Because I'm an average guy. I'm not one of those autistic savants whose collective IQ is in the stratosphere. Shauna suggested another possibility. I could kick her buttocks. I could kick his fangs down his neck more effectively. I can kick his balls right up his throat. I could ruin their life in ways you couldn't possibly imagine. That would never be tied to you. Wow. Talk about catching fire in the eyes. I had a feeling if I let her leave, it would be very unpleasant. Let us consider that a plan. See, Shauna, I wouldn't mind if she felt some anguish, but she is the mother of my children. We do this first, okay? She didn't like it, but agreed before leaving to check on the kids. She has a small crush on you, Jack. Be cautious now that you are about to be single. She's pondering a variety of things. I gazed at June with amazement. I'd always liked Shauna, but I had no idea she felt this way. It was fairly simple. Overall, the house was in my name alone, necessary because I was the only one who earned anything when we purchased it. I met with various contractors and architects before settling on the best option for me. On the recommendation of my lawyer, I loosened up on Charlie, giving her ample access to go out to lunch with her friends and do some shopping. I also took her Mercedes in for some work, which included installing a GPS and an anti-theft system. With it, I could remotely turn off the engine from my phone or computer. I noticed her lunches were taking longer than usual and looked into it. She'd eat lunch with her friends before sneaking away to a friend's house for an hour or two of bedroom time with her sweetheart. I tracked her GPS the following time she went to lunch, and as soon as she headed approaching her love nest, I turned off the automobile. She called me in a panic because her car was cut off and wouldn't start. "I'm stuck. Where are you now?" She had to tell me where she was all the way across town from our house. "What exactly are you doing there?" "I was going to stop by Beverly's. We went shopping the other day, and I left my luggage in her car." "Isn't Beverly at work?" "Yes, but she left her bag in the garage." I appreciated the moment. "Try the car again, Charlie. I bet it starts immediately away." She did. It did. She got roughly 5 blocks before it stopped again. When she called back, I informed her that the best thing she could do was try to return home. She didn't comprehend straight away, but she dashed for home, shocked that it never cut off. When it happened twice more, she had an idea. I filmed her screaming rant later, including instructing Marissa to get the heck out of the room when she tried to calm her down. The expression of pain in our child's eyes did quiet her down, but the damage had already been done. They had a really good relationship. When she inquired about the basement, I told her it was finally time to spruce it up for the girls. They would soon reach the age where they would require space. She took that as my accepting her lifestyle. Charlie used some of her allowance to buy a burner phone, which I discovered and bugged. It appeared that there was unrest in paradise. Apparently, they had planned to leave their husbands and settle down in domestic bliss in my house, with me footing the majority of the costs. However, my actions had put a damper on their plans. Maybe we should call it off, at least for a bit. He's not reacting as we expected, and I'm concerned he'll do something extreme. He scoffed. "He is a chicken. You grabbed him by the sword hairs because you know he won't damage the kids." She exhaled. "Perhaps not them, but we are fair game. I've seen him at work, and he can be harsh when necessary. He has made my life extremely tough, yet he has not done anything severe yet. You are a completely different matter. Working for the county is a very public job. A county commissioner having an affair with the wife of a famous local businessman makes for a compelling news story. When the paper gets hold of it, you'll be out on your buttocks before the ink has dried. And then, where would we be? How would you explain this to your wife? Or have you already told her that you're leaving her for another woman?" There was a long silence, and her tone had a distinct edge to it. When she spoke, I had the opposite impression. I'm starting to believe you have a bigger chicken than my spouse. Man up and tell her before my hubby. And just because he hasn't pursued you yet does not imply he won't. He will simply analyze every data he can find and hit you where he knows it will hurt the most. You best be ready because it's coming soon. I do not want to see you for at least a month. We both have to think, and I need to repair as much of my relationship as possible with my husband. If we break up, I want him to be as forgiving as possible, and I'm not going to ask for much. He'll be as fair as he can, particularly with the girls. I am serious. After a month, I'll call you when I'm ready to talk. Well, they simply given me a present with a month to complete my plans. I determined to make good use of my time. I began by scheduling a meeting with the head of the county commission. He and my father had a long history of business relationships rather than friendships. He simply assumed it had to do with my business and agreed to meet me for supper. We met at a fancy steakhouse outside of town, and I made sure he was full and had a few drinks before we got started. I'm considering transferring my business. Fred Hanover County has been sniffing around. They have a lot of vacant buildings that would suit my purposes, and they're offering some excellent tax breaks. Fred immediately frowned. The prospect of 89 jobs leaving his county did not sit well with him, especially given we'd been in the media a few months before announcing my expansion, which would need the hiring of another 30 or so people, especially in an election year. Why? Why would you do that? The county has always had a positive connection with you. I'm not sure what to say, Jack. With the economy as it is now, I doubt we could provide you any reductions. I don't want any concessions, Fred. The truth is that expanding the property I seek requires rezoning, and I believe that will be tough, especially when the permits are given again. Why? You know, the rezoning notices have gone up and no one has objected, so voting on it should be a simple rubber stamp exercise. Regarding permissions, what makes you believe you will have trouble? Because your permissions and zoning manager are taking advantage of my wife, and he is well aware of it. I know he resembles a punctured balloon. The scandal, if it came, would be quite messy. At the very least, all of the county's departments would suffer consequences. Our local daily had an investigative reporter who was so good that national newspapers wanted to hire him. He'd be like a bloodhound sniffing out new blood. He sighed after looking down at the remains of his steak. The food felt a little heavy on him. Are you sure? Video and audio, including a scenario where he's jacking off with a camera while talking trash to my wife, and you can clearly tell he's in his office. Lewd conduct on county time and property. What do you want? Well, his bomb on a silver platter would be ideal. Other than that, nothing. At least not right now. I do have some remodeling plans for my house. I'd like to get approval if feasible. He had no idea. I'll look into this. I am sure there is a training seminar somewhere that the county believes he should attend. 3 days should be enough. That'd be good, Fred. I'll wait till after the election, but then I'll burn him down. You get that, right? That should give you enough time to devise a reason to get rid of him before I begin. We parted ways, knowing that our relationship would be forever changed, and he dreaded it. When I requested a meeting, another connection was ruined. Thank you, Charlie. There was a lecture, and I convinced the contractor to complete the paperwork in his name. They started the following day. Charlie showed little interest. I suppose she had other things on her mind. To her credit, she attempted to renew our connection. She gave me a long spiel about how bored she was, how her children had outgrown her, and how she felt less appealing as a woman. There's no excuse for her behavior. She assured me that she had stumbled into a predator during a low period in her life, and that it would never happen again. Really, what will happen in a few years when the girls grow up, go to college, and make a life for themselves, and you're here staring at 4 walls, bored out of your mind? Instead of ruining our marriage, you could have volunteered for a charity, joined a book club, or gotten a real job that would have given you a purpose, something to put your energies into. However, you chose a sex companion instead. How does that work for you? I will not touch you. Our relationship is on life support and will soon end. We will not go out with a bang, more of a whimper. I highly urge you to contemplate life after marriage. Well, at least for me, because it will happen. She raced out of the room, crying. For the following few weeks, she was a model wife and mother. We went out as a family, even spending a full weekend taking the kids to Disney. I despised it, but the girls and even Charlie appeared to enjoy it. The only time things became ugly was when we went to bed. I'd booked a room with 2 queen-sized beds, making it clear we wouldn't be sharing. She tried everything, walking about naked as much as possible and promising me whatever type of intercourse I desired. Nothing was off the table. It was difficult, no pun intended, but I refused, even tossing her out of bed one night when I awoke holding her spoon. To me, that flipped the switch, and the bitch returned. She was threatening divorce when I presented her with official separation papers. Knowing that the confrontation would be nasty, I got the girls out of school early and took them to the park. They weren't babies anymore, and they realized something was wrong. They had also assumed it was about another person. They just weren't sure which parent was to blame. I gently stated that their mother and I were not getting along very well and that I would be moving out. They fell into tears, hugged me, and begged me to remain. I cuddled them until they couldn't. I'm not going for my babies. I could never live without you, but I'm leaving the house and moving into the new apartment I built in the basement. Technically, I'll be in the house, but entirely independent. This is why I put twin beds in the second bedroom. It isn't as nice as your current accommodations, but it will always be there for you. Here are your keys. I just asked you. Do not allow your mother get her hands on them. They showered me with kisses. Happy? I would still be available 24 hours a day and 7 days a week. But we're nonetheless upset about the split. It makes them feel a little better. I promised them they could go shopping on Saturday and decorate the room however they wanted. Because I had no idea what was coming, I sent the girls into the basement when we came home, instructing them to check out their room and see what they needed. Charlie welcomed me at the door, screaming at the top of her lungs, and I knew I had made the correct decision. My lawyer advised the neighbors to call the cops after she became so noisy. I never entered the house, despite the fact that it was wired for sight and sound. I showed the police officer a copy of my separation documents. She inquired as to what had triggered the argument. I shut her down really quickly when I noticed a spark of judgment in her eyes. Yes, I had them drawn up to ensure everything went smoothly. It may or may not lead to a divorce, but my lawyer suggested I do this to document the process. Even though you can't ask, it's done. Adultery. Hers, not mine. If you don't believe me, I'll show you video and images. She stared at Charlie, who had turned many intriguing shades of red. So what? That does not give the jerk the right to forsake me and our children. Officer, if you will. I got her to accompany me around the house and unlock the gate of the privacy fence I had built. Charlie followed and demanded to join. However, the cop, in her wisdom, advised her to remain outside for just a minute. I showed her the apartment. She was impressed until we opened the door to the girls' room, where they were snuggled together on the bed, quietly crying. They jumped into my arms, and I took a few moments to calm them. Chanel, Mom is simply having a rough day. I'm sure she has calmed down by now. Okay, officer? The officer nodded sternly before smiling at the females. Your father is correct. She is much calmer now. Your father and I will return to speak with her once more to ensure that she has said goodbye. And we talked when we got outside. It must be awful to be you right now. However, you may wind up doing the correct thing for your girls. I have no advice for you except to always put the children first. If my previous spouse had been half the man you were, I doubt I would have hated his guts as much. When we returned, Charlie was much calmer, assuring the officer that she would not have to respond to any further outbursts. She was so in love with me that it was tearing her heart out. I'll tell you exactly what I told him. Put the children's welfare first. How you act throughout this will shape how kids perceive both of you for the rest of their life. And ma'am, this is merely a separation. We're not even close to getting divorced. I can't answer the question about going to court to have it overturned. You'll need a lawyer for that. Good luck to you both. She waved at the police as she drove away before turning on me and hissing. Now we're in the living room. She stomped into the house, and I took advantage of the moment to circle back around, lock my gate behind me, and enter. I'd add 2 deadbolts and 3 safety latches on the upper door. She would need to employ a battering ram to get in. It was the same with the freshly built bottom door. I'd also chosen it for its soundproofing rating. She could stand at the top and scream her head off, and no one would know. The girl remained with me till bedtime. I promised the mother that everything was great, and I called her as soon as they walked out. Shut up and listen. The females will enter through the front entrance in a few seconds. How you act with them right now may impact how close you will be later in life. So, do as I did. Suck it up and think about them. I hung up. The females did not call, so it must have been a calm night. Charlie did, in fact, hire a lawyer who maxed up the one card I had left her and secured an in-chambers hearing with the judge. She was a woman in her late 40s with worn eyes. Seeing families tear each other apart and use their children as pawns on a regular basis must drain a person's energy. Mr. Sayers, why did you file for separation? Because, Your Honor, my wife is currently seeing another man. She admits it has been at least 9 months. When I found out, she said she had no intention of terminating the affair and that I would have to deal with it. Maybe I could have done it if it had only been the two of us. But we had 2 kids, aged 11 and 13, and I wasn't sure I wanted to expose them to this type of lifestyle at such a young age. If my wife denies any of this, I can provide you with video and audio proof, all of which was obtained legally. She looked at Charlie, who hung her head and turned back to me, appearing to smile slightly. Mr. Sayers, I understand you have moved out of the house. How far would you say you are from your daughter's 26 steps, ma'am? I rebuilt our basement and converted it into an apartment. It is fully separated from the rest of the house. I have no motive to enter the house other than by invitation. My wife, too, has the same restrictions. Invitation only. She turned to Charlie. Mrs. Sayers, it appears that you will need to make some judgments here. If you truly want to keep your marriage, you must reflect on your recent decisions. If this were a divorce, I would suggest counseling. However, this is simply a trial separation. You may end up getting back together when it expires. Thus, I see no reason or legal basis to withdraw it. Therefore, I will not order it. The separation documents were properly filed and organized, so they are at the end of 90 days. He can either renew it, drop it, or sue for divorce. I wish you both the utmost luck. We were escorted out of the chambers and onto the parking lot. Are you genuinely angry? What a foolish question, however, not to the extent that I was. What I'm feeling the most right now is melancholy. I always assumed the only way we'd ever be apart was if one of us held the other's hand as we died. Now I know it will never happen. My rage compels me to inform you that I wasted my years with you. But we have the girls, so it cannot be a waste. I got in the car before she could answer. As I drove away, I noticed her in her car, weeping hysterically. In the past, I would have cuddled her and told her it didn't matter what occurred. We were always there for each other. Now I simply sighed and turned right. For the next 3 weeks, we coexisted above and downstairs. Charlie was unhappy when the girls refused to let her inside my flat. She tried to put pressure on them, but they stood fast. Finally, one day I knocked on her door. She seemed surprised to see me. I hadn't seen her or spoken to her since I caught her before she could speak and gave her instructions. Follow me. The girls have been learning how to cook on the gas grill and prepare dinner for us, so don't screw it up for them. She followed meekly. The girls, dressed in gigantic aprons and chef hats, hugged her and took her to our picnic table where we ate herb roast chicken, grilled vegetables, corn on the cob, and tomato salad. They even had cheesecake, which they made from a mix. Charlie, to her credit, said nothing harsh, praised the girls on their cooking abilities, and helped clear the dishes. Echo guided her through the apartment, including their room. Marissa had developed the habit of sleeping downstairs most of the time. Echo stayed upstairs except on weekends. I knew the apartment was much smaller than they were used to, so as a compromise, I offered them restricted access to the man cave, where they had connected a gaming system to the monster television. On most Fridays and Saturdays, they would invite friends over to spend the night camping out on air mattresses. It was largely females, but there were odd boys in the evening, and a mother or two would accompany them until the lads went. Sometimes it was Charlie. Most evenings it was pizza, but every now and then the girls would grill under my watchful eye, serving usually burgers and hot dogs. But if there were only a few, it would be chicken or pig. Summer was approaching and school was almost out, so I splurged and purchased a massive above-ground pool, making them more popular than ever. Most parents were aware of our living arrangements, but never commented. Some of the mothers suggested, and one explicitly told me she would not be opposed to exploring a connection. I thanked everyone as graciously as I could and pledged to remember them if I ever became disconnected. This irritated Charlie tremendously. especially since they did it in front of her. She chastised me harshly one night after the parents and children had left. What were your thoughts? That bitch nearly got into your lap when you were eating. Do you understand how embarrassing that was for me? Not really. Do you think it was as embarrassing as discovering your spouse was having an affair with someone else and all her pals knew and even offered alibis and locations to further destabilize a marriage? If so, I can stress. Besides, we may have been a little near, but the picnic table was kind of crowded, and her kid and both of mine were right there. I pushed the knife in and twisted it slightly, loving her reaction. Aside from that, I told you up front that I did not intend to be celibate. Did you know she's got 3 tattoos? One of these is clearly a bad thing. It cannot be seen, except when she is bare. Allison was a huge flirt, and I knew about the tattoo because she had joined her daughter in our pool, along with 6 other mothers and 2 fathers, for a swim party the girls had organized. Let's just say there was a wardrobe malfunction that exposed more of her than she preferred. She reattached her blazing red top as I and the men smiled. Charlie was distraught despite her meticulous plans. This was not something she expected to have to deal with. It was all BS. Of course, I wasn't going to do anything to give her leverage in the divorce. When it came, it still felt nice to yank her chain. I attempted to avoid all contact with Charlie, but I still monitored her phone conversations and videotaped her everyday routine, revealing that she had 2 partners pretty much whenever she wanted. None at all for 3 months was taking its toll. She appears to have a large toy collection, something I was not aware of. It was kind of funny after a while, but also sad in many ways. After she was released, she frequently wept herself to sleep. She still had her burner phone, unknowing that I had bugged it and removed the limits on her regular phone. I recall witnessing the amazement on her face when a telemarketer called and her frantically phoning everyone she could think of to ensure it was fully operational. She interpreted it as a sign that I was thawing and that things will improve, rather than the death knell to our marriage if she had considered it. The fact that I didn't care whether she talked to her lover or not would have given her pause. The elections had passed, the county manager had retired, and the new appointment told the commissioners that he would remove the fat off all county budgets. Bob was secretly released. He screamed at the manager and petitioned the county commissioners. They met him in a conference room and showed them the video I had given them of him pumping his tube and what appeared to be his office, all while shouting in explicit detail about what he was going to do with Charlie when they met again. There you have it. Bob, the owner of this video, has vowed to go public with it and sue the county for permitting a manager to have an affair and using official computers and phones to play sex games to make it stop. All we have to do is terminate you without recommendation. If we don't, we'll all be embarrassed. We'll most likely have to pay the man a chunk of change to make it go away, and we'll make sure you're charged for as many things as our attorney thinks we can. Stick. Your prospects of ever working for another county or municipality would be 0. In the private sector, jobs in any management capacity would be extremely difficult to come by. Do everyone a favor, Bob. Consider it a lesson learnt and walk away. He had no choice, and the local newspaper made no mention of his departure. He basically gone. Charlie called me waffling between rage and regret. Did you need to do that? He has young children. How will he support them? Shouldn't he have thought about all of this before deciding to mess you over? I'm sorry about his children, but his wife has a nice career now, and with child support, she should be fine. His wife is a mother who stays at home. Not anymore. It appears she has an accounting degree and a local company recruited her fast. I hear it's a great job. Who would recruit someone who had been out of work for 6 years and give them such a nice job? Me, I said before hanging up. Bob's wife was a chubby, lovely little woman who always smiled. It took me shattering her world to eventually knock it out. What shall I do now? We had no other source of income besides his. How will I care for my children? Her oldest was in school, and the 3-year-old was attempting to climb all over me while I tickled her. You will come and work for me. I'm known to be a good boss. Even if you don't, I will assist you. It is not my fault that he betrayed your marriage and put you in this situation. But fault or not, I feel responsible. This is a no-strings-attached deal. My children are older and are aware of the situation, yet it still has a significant impact. I'm doing my best to alleviate the discomfort, but I can't eliminate it. That is, of course, in case you decide to leave. If you choose to support him, you have my prayers. But I have to tell you that everything seems too slick and professional to have been his first time. I appreciate your patience and apologies for the information I had to provide you. If you wish to divorce, I can provide you with evidence." I left her fighting back tears as she clutched her daughter. She called me 3 days later with a tight, controlled voice. She informed me he wasn't going to tell her he was fired or that it was because of an affair until she shoved it in his face. I assumed he was going to hit me, so I smirked and told him to go ahead. The bruises would easily land him in jail and me with a restraining order. I told him it would be an appropriate conclusion to a dreadful scenario. He rushed off, and I have not seen him since. He doesn't have any running money, though, because I cleared out his accounts the same afternoon. You told me what was going on, and it was not done out of spite. Well, not much. He has 2 young children, and they have needs. I was not going to leave them wanting for anything because of his faults. I have enough money to survive on for 3 months. Is the job offer still open? She started part-time the next week. I was impressed by her intelligence, and we agreed that she would spend half of her time in the office and the other half working from home. This was extremely beneficial to her in terms of childcare. My workers were not idiots, and when Charlie's photo disappeared from my desk to be replaced by more of the ladies in me, they understood and even offered cautious sympathies. All but one, Misty, loathed Charlie since she believed Misty was attempting to come on to me and caused a commotion at a company party. Misty departed in tears, and I chewed Charlie's butt cheeks. She awoke the next morning sober. Looking back, I realized it was shortly after she began her affair with Bob. Transference. I suppose if she was fooling around, so was I. After I threatened to cut Charlie off financially for a month, she came to the office and apologized to Misty. Misty accepted it, and they hugged to demonstrate that there were no bitter feelings. I could see most of their faces, and the pats on the back indicated that they were seeking for a soft spot for the knife. She walked into my office smiling. "I've just heard you may fire me if you want, boss. But I'm delighted you're too decent a guy for that bitch. You never noticed it, but she was constantly catty to the women here when you weren't around. We are going to turn the cards over. Who is going after you first? I never told you this, but throughout college, I worked as a dealer at the Coast's casinos. And if I get my hands on the cards, the other hussies will have no chance. I enjoy romantic movies, French cuisine, and long, languid massages with warm, scented oils. Misty was a trim redhead, busty, confident, and understood how to dress to stand out without breaking company rules. She was 12 years younger than me and in a committed relationship with a nice guy. I figured she would marry sooner or later. I had already agreed to escort her down the aisle and paid for the honeymoon. Within reason, I understood she wasn't being serious. I surprised her by bantering back. "Since we were alone, I may just take you up on that. I've often wondered if your carpet matches the drapes." Her hand shot to her lips, and she giggled as she dashed for the door. She turned back and stared me dead in the eyes. It would have matched, but I removed the carpet since I preferred smooth floors. "If you don't believe me, just ask Jerry." I told her that would be our first topic of conversation the next time we met, and I listened to her giggle all the way down the corridor. It made me grin for the remainder of the day, and I wasn't as serious as I had been before. The other ladies noticed, and Misty must have blabbed, since whenever I became depressed or furious, one of them would say something to cheer me up. I knew things were out of control when our 60-year-old receptionist informed me that she was from a different generation. So how did I feel about shag carpet? Charlie was getting desperate and scaling the walls alone. She has no partner or husband, and her only outlets are lunches with her friends. And after I nearly wrecked her best friend's marriage by telling her husband everything about his wife and allowing Charlie to continue the affair in their home, none of them would even discuss her issue, let alone help and abet it. The spouse had spoken, and Charlie felt her remaining friends were on thin ice. A month later, I answered the door to find Charlie on her knees, imploring me to just talk to her. I contemplated about 20 extremely harsh comments before opening the door wider and returning to the living room. She followed a few seconds later, gazing about with caution, as if she were expecting an ambush. "Beer." She nodded, so I fetched a glass and poured it for her. She tasted it and examined the glass more closely. "What's this?" It is real bark that has been imported. If you don't like it, I have a few other variations you might be interested in. Have you become a lush? I looked at my watch for 3.5 minutes before she pissed me off. No, I have not transformed into a lush. I've decided to prioritize quality over quantity, and it normally takes me about 2 weeks to finish a 12-pack. I'm afraid to say it has rubbed off on the girls. If you check in my fridge, the most popular items are craft sodas, root beers, and unusual fruit tastes. How about you? Have you been hitting the wine harder? I knew from the camera that she was drinking about a bottle per night out, significantly more than she did when we lived together. She blushed, surprising me with her honesty. Yes, I have, and it helps me get through the lonely evenings, but I noticed it and have started reducing back. Why would you be lonely? Loverboy is officially semi-single. Why not go out and play scratch the itch, as it were? She looked horrified. Wouldn't this upset you? Nothing more than when you did it? While we were still living together. At the very least, you are officially separated and he is going through a divorce, so the stigma will be significantly reduced. She looked down, ashamed. To be honest, I hoped we hadn't been together for a long time. The excitement is gone. The sex was quite nice, especially considering we had to sneak around to have it. I believe it was more the exhilaration of a filthy little secret than the actual act. I know the first few times you found out were not quite as satisfying. I knew Bob had left for a job in a little county half a state away. The income was roughly 2/3 of what he earned here, and his child support was based on his previous earnings. However, paying such payments on a weekly basis proved difficult. If you wanted to play, one of them would need to drive at least 3 hours. Besides, she replied, I know you already know a lot more than you acknowledge, so I'm sure you know he's out of the picture. To be honest, the notion of being with him again makes my stomach turn. If I had to do it all over again, I would not give him a second thought. He wasn't worth what he cost me. He did not cost you anything, Charlie. You ran up that bill when you put him in my face and threatened to take everything from me if I didn't agree to let you continue. She was snuffling now, small sobs that threatened to grow louder. For some reason, that irritated me. Stop crying, Charlie. All of your tears will not make this go away. You must have come down here for a reason. What do you want? She raised her head with a remarkably resolute expression. I want one thing, you. I want you back. I want you to embrace me and nibble my ear like you used to and tell me everything is all right. I want you to join the girls with me. We were all covered up in quilts on that large couch, eating popcorn and making fun of the movie. We were watching till they fell asleep, each clinging on to one of us. I want to feel loved again. Not empty or hollow, just marking the days. I realize my promises are meaningless to you right now, but I implore you to give me another chance to start over and make amends. She must have been drained after that brief speech. She sighed and got up. Think about it for a time. I do not expect an answer right now. Will you hug me before I go? Just a second? Charlie appeared confused and miserable, so I wrapped her up and let her cry on my shoulder for a few minutes. She eventually pulled back, thanked me, and departed. I sat on the couch for a while till Marissa came in and asked where dinner was. I pointed to the menus printed on the corkboard next to the refrigerator picture. She must have phoned Darcy because she came down and hesitated between Chinese fried chicken pizza and burgers. Before choosing on Creole, you can phone your mother and ask her if she wants to join us. That is, if you choose to. Darcy dashed back upstairs, and 10 minutes later, she was there with Charlie on her heels. They pondered until I told them that if they didn't call soon, it would be too late. They chose to pick it up and leave, returning with a movie they'd rented and asking if we may watch it in the man cave. After dinner, I ate my black and blue salad, loving the combination of black and steak and blue cheese crumbles, while watching them converse and sample from every plate, including mine. Darcy had been courageous and ordered gator bites, and they weren't horrible. We went out to the building and sat on the leather couch, the kids between us. It's like old times. They had chosen a romance, and I made light of it until Darcy punched me in the ribs and told me to shut up so they could enjoy it. Neither girl saw the ending till the next day, since they both fell asleep snuggling up to us. I turned over and saw Charlie crying softly, trying not to wake Marissa. We kissed them awake, and I sent them home with their mother, saying I'd want to remain for a short while. Charlie even gave me a goodnight kiss as they went. I sat for a long time wondering if I could ever trust her again. What would I do if this happened? And did the bitch come out in her again? Could my heart withstand another strike like that? Sleep was a long time coming, and they discovered me still on the couch in the man cave. The next morning, I went inside and showered while they finished the movie. Charlie made a genuine effort, I must confess. She cooked my favorite meals and didn't mind when I didn't always accept her invitations. The friendship with the girls grew stronger, especially when school started again and she brought them shopping. I always gave Marissa one of my cards, and Charlie, true to form, bought herself an outfit or two, so I didn't complain. It was nowhere near the amount she used to spend. She still had her stipend and one card, and she was learning to live within the budget I had set for her. She astonished us all when she approached me for a favor. "I have been thinking a lot about my life, Jack. I suppose I'll accept your advice and look for a career or a great volunteer opportunity. If I do, will you watch the girls? What if I need you?" I gave her a warm hug and praised her. She'd also been going to the gym, and it was clear she was regaining her soccer mom shape. I always complimented her on her improvement and even provided her extra money for training clothes and new clothing. We were back to bed together after seeing a rather racy movie one night with too much wine. It was good. Sex with Charlie was usually enjoyable, especially when she drank a little too much and her inhibitions were relaxed. We awoke a few hours later, nestled together, relieved the daughters were spending the night with friends, and started to pound the snot out of each other. I awoke to her giving me a BJ, and she wouldn't stop until I shot it down her throat. She used to despise this, but she also refused to screw other men. I'm afraid my insecurities led me to comment on it. She burst into blazing crimson flames. "Jack, I still don't. It's the first time. And I did it as a way of saying thank you for last night and for improving our relationship." I felt like a jackass and apologized while thanking her for her gift. She grinned before running into the bathroom to brush our teeth. "Where are we going from here?" She was truly astonished by my question, but from now on, if any of us has an urge, I want the other to scratch it. I haven't been with anyone other than you for months. Odd. After cheating, I became faithful. The notion of another man touching me makes my stomach turn. I mostly believed her because I was able to monitor her movements virtually constantly. If she was messing around, she was quite excellent at concealing it. 2 months passed, and we shared a bed approximately once a week, sneaking to each other's place after the kids were asleep. I'm sure they realized they weren't babies anymore, so they alternated spending the night with one or the other, typically at the other's residence. Encouragement. I believe Charlie landed a volunteer position with one of the larger charities, assisting with the preparation of events ranging from fun runs to formal balls and banquets. For the first 2 or 3 months, the majority of activities took place during the day. On weekends, she was generally accompanied by one or both of the girls. I occasionally went along, which seemed to please her. As the weather cooled, they switched to more indoor venues, with events held primarily at night. I accompanied her to a few, appreciating her new body and the wonderful outfits I had purchased for her, seeing her get hit on and shooting them down while pointing them out. It was entertaining, and I did network a little, but it took too much out of me to do it on a regular basis while also running my business, so I cut back to approximately 1 out of 3. Charlie felt dissatisfied until I asked how she would like it if I woke her up early and dragged her to work, and she still had to go to her job despite having very little sleep. She regularly ate breakfast with us the second day after showing us images on her phone. Of all the gorgeous people, I didn't think much of it, preferring to trust her since I assumed she had learned her lesson. The video cameras were still in situ, but I had ceased examining them some weeks ago. We were slowly returning to each other. I had mostly moved on from what she had done, believing she was genuinely sorry and knowing what would happen if she fell again. But pride does not precede a fall. Complacency does. June called me one day and asked if I wanted to bring the kids home for the weekend, including myself. Charlie had a 2-day event, so we kissed her, wished her luck on the project, and even invited her to stay at their mansion for the night. She declined, claiming she would be too weary to drive the extra 35 miles. He told us to have a good time, kissed us farewell, and waved till we were out of sight. Harry and June greeted us at the entrance. The girls squealed over each other before running off to put on their beach costumes and hit the new pool. We didn't worry since we knew Shauna would watch them till we arrived. I finally settled in, changed, and headed to the pool. It was an extremely odd experience. June mentioned how much my girls had grown. Marissa will be a lovely woman, Jack, and Darcy will become a living doll as she grows older. I glanced at the females with fresh eyes, seeing how they had matured. Damn, now I have to buy a shotgun. Adult women. There was nothing to ignore. June prefers to be naked at home, which took Carrie's parents some time to adjust to. But for the benefit of the females, she wore her conservative bikini. Shauna, on the other hand, wore a nearly undetectable bottom, made evident only by the contrast white strips molding into her body. I could not help but gaze. I asked June why she seemed so cool to me. When it comes to the female Jack, you're basically a complete moron. Do you know that? Shauna is upset because she provided you numerous signs when the problems with Charlie began, and you never replied. I know with your old-fashioned sense of honor, you wouldn't even touch another lady until you were divorced. But she doesn't understand why you didn't just let Charlie go. If I had, I'd have been just as nasty as Charlie. Furthermore, I was doing everything with the children in mind, and I couldn't afford any hint of controversy if I sought full custody. How do you and Charlie get along? Much better. She doesn't sit around the house anymore. She exercises and is much more financially prudent. She even volunteers for a large charity. I haven't moved back in yet, but we do have the occasional sleepover. I have great hopes for the future. Harry sighed in June. Would not look me in the eyes. We need to chat, Jack, after the girls are asleep for the night. That destroyed my mood for the remainder of the evening. The girls didn't notice I had gone silent and dashed off after dinner to see a movie in their 32-seat media room. Shauna was keeping an eye on them, making sure they got to bed, kissing them goodbye before they left. We entered the pub, which was set up like an old-time Western saloon. He grabbed us a few beers and June a glass of her favorite wine. I tried it anticipating something extraordinary for $600 per bottle, but it tasted like a $20 bottle. We sat sipping. I knew not to rush them. They would say what they wanted when they were ready. June has finally started. You're aware that we make significant contributions to various charities, correct? Especially because we can write off the majority of it. We'd rather give money to an organization that can make a difference in the world than to the government. And Charlie has hit us a few times in her new role, and we have always delivered a big check. I quickly realized I was not going to like where this was going. We occasionally attend charity events such as flag-raising ceremonies. Their idea is that by publicly supporting it, we can persuade others. About a month ago, we attended a black tie dinner at 1,000 to plate, with all earnings benefiting the organization. Charlie was there behind the scenes, orchestrating everything. We didn't have time to talk because she was so busy. I don't think she even knew we were there. The night was nearly over. The tables cleared the orchestra seating for people who wanted to dance. We were about to depart when I spotted her again. Look, she handed me a photo of Charlie in an outfit I'd never seen. It showcased her physique extremely well. I wasn't really looking at the dress, though. But the guy she was kissing was David Duncan, June explained, answering an unasked question. He's fairly well off and a notorious sex addict. He goes to these events trying to score, and he enjoys seducing married women. He's really terrific, Jack. He even tried his lines on me a few of times before giving up. I used the facilities, returned to Harry, showed him the image, and we blended in with the surroundings. It's not actually that hard. In a throng of 500, the men were all dressed in tuxedos, while the women wore gowns. We snapped a couple more photos. All of the stances were inappropriate, with some worse than others. That is why we wanted you here. This is not our life, but since you were one of our oldest friends, we decided to tell you. It is up to you to decide what to do with the knowledge. We just didn't want you to repeat a mistake. Most couples would never have talked, following some strange belief about the bearers of bad news not getting involved, then being all over you with sympathy and support when things went bad. However, these were sincere friends, and the tiny differences in their thought processes drove them to talk now in order to provide me with knowledge and time to make decisions. If there was a way to retune the rest of the world to their way of thinking, it would very likely be a far better place. I nodded, immersed in thinking. The first betrayal had left me deeply hurt. But this one, after everything we'd been through and the promises she'd made, hit me hard. Without a doubt, our marriage had ended. Emotions hadn't set in yet, so I thanked Harry and June, excused myself, and went to bed. I expected to be awake for half the night, but once my head hit that pillow, I was out like a light. At 6, my eyes opened and I lay there thinking about what I wanted to accomplish. The divorce was back on. Without a question, I'd call the lawyer on Monday and restart the proceedings. I wasn't sure when I'd tell Charlie or the girls, but I wasn't planning to wait too long. Time to move forward. I would go my way and she would go hers. I'd still live in the basement until Marissa graduated, and maybe Darcy would accompany me when I moved out. Charlie, judging by her behavior, had very little common sense. She would accept for the sake of the girls, if nothing else. Again, she was not known for being agreeable. Time will tell. We spent the next 2 days watching the girls have fun, while we also participated in some of the activities. June had decided she wanted horses, so they built a 6-stall barn and filled it up. I was scared of such large creatures, but the ones they had purchased were recognized for their intellect and compassionate nature. Harry found he is allergic to horses, so June, Shauna, the girls, and I hitched up and enjoyed a wonderful morning ambling around. June had a lunch served to their gazebo beside their favorite pond, which might also be termed a tiny lake. Harry met us there with the rods, and I went out fishing for a few hours before returning. The pond was well stocked, and we both believed in catch and release, so we could appreciate the battle the bass would put up before carefully removing the hook and returning them to grow larger for the next fight. While fishing, we discussed business. I owed Harry my company. He and June basically urged that I begin, all because of something I'd done for June. June suffered from dry skin, not in a bad way, but enough to make her uncomfortable at times. An offhand comment led me to believe I was a civil engineer who specialized in water systems for multi-story buildings ranging from office to industrial to residential, or a combination of the three. Thinking about her situation, I went into the man cave, which was still just a workshop, and created the wall that we trademarked. It was one wall of your shower, with padded protrusion nozzles every 4 inches from knee to neck height. They would pulse and vibrate while delivering soap and water, rinse water and body lotion. It would wash, massage, and lotion you at the same time, providing a one-stop shop for cleanliness. A side effect occurred when a woman washed her front, leaning into the vibrating heads and touching strategic points. It was an extremely lovely experience. The pressure and temperature of the water, as well as the strength of the vibrations caused by the lotion's heat, were all controlled by a small touchpad computer on the shower door, with up to 6 programmable preferences for each family member. We did not mention this in our advertising, but there were a couple of pieces in women's magazines gushing about the sensation of amazing cleanliness. Harry let me install the prototype for June, and she loved it. She showed it to her friends, and a group of women came over to take showers. Finally, Harry demanded his bathroom back and instructed them to buy their own. June called me with 7 orders that were to be fulfilled as quickly as feasible. I surprised her by telling her that I didn't have the time or desire to do any more. It was merely meant to be a pleasant gift for my buddies. This prompted a lengthy discussion about how much it had cost me to develop and whether I had it protected. Harry quickly loaned me his lawyer to obtain the patents and draft the charter for an LLC firm. We rented a small industrial building and hired 2 men to help build the ones for June's friends. We received excellent compliments after installing each custom-fit wall in the bathrooms. All of their pals were wealthy, which was a good thing since they were not cheap. It wasn't an issue of keeping up with the Joneses, but rather of keeping up with the Gates and buffets. Harry and June loaned me $500,000 to begin started, correct? It just went from there. The first 2 years were largely covered by word of mouth, write-ups, and publications. We ended up installing them for a variety of performers, athletes, singers, and writers. Even 2 former First Ladies' 5-star hotels began adding them to their deluxe rooms. One former NFL quarterback was quite impressed. He requested that I construct a portable device and place it in the locker room for his former team. It stayed there for 2 months before the coach removed it to prevent disputes about who would be next. My firm constructed a very huge device that could hold 5 people at once and installed it in every locker room of every professional and most college football lockers, followed by hockey players, basketball teams, and pretty much any major sport that required muscles. Harry was astute enough to ensure that the lawyer obtained international patents, and we sued corporations in France and Portugal, ultimately acquiring their assets. And Harry wants to take it global after the divorce, so they devised a strategy to keep the company out of Charlie's reach. I was fine with that. Not angry enough to screw her over, but also not angry enough to reward her. In fact, after consulting with the lawyers, I sold the company to Harry for a good profit after subtracting the debt. I still work there as a manager at a very good income. It was all very clear, and when the divorce came, I planned to offer her 60% of our assets in lieu of any additional claims, such as maintenance and child support. I had already calculated the cost based on my new pay, and had it transferred every week into an escrow account for the final split, which would be utilized when the kids needed it. I was giving her the house as a $800,000 gift. After the girls reached 18, they had a home over their heads, and I agreed to pay all utility costs until then, unless Mom remarried. My attorney told me I was being overly nice, but when I told him I was thinking about the girls, not Charlie, he shut up. Overall, the transaction resulted in her receiving the property and $2.6 million. It would be difficult for her to reject. She refused. I observed from the CCTV cameras as she was served, sitting at the dining room table and opening the envelopes. The first step was to file a divorce petition. The second set had personal images of her and her new beau. I left her a small letter. I was ready to forgive you, Charlie, since I believed you had learnt your lesson and would never wander again. Guess I was mistaken. It's a lesson for me. A cheater who has cheated before will continue to cheat. It's an excellent deal. I'm offering Charlie. You'll emerge smelling like a rose. Simply sign the papers and we can both move on with our lives. There's no reason to battle over custody. We will share it until they reach maturity. To do this, I will continue to live in the flat until Marissa is 18. Then Darcy can live wherever she wants. She'll be 16 and able to make her own decisions. Read the documents and take it to whichever lawyer you select. Allow them to look it over. Please do not be dumb about this. In the end, Charlie, it will serve no purpose and cost you money that you might want to save. Good luck with your future relationships. Please do not use me as a reference. Yes, I sent the same pictures that my lawyer sent, the ones I handed to his wife. Be careful. This is an alienation of affection state, and a smart lawyer may easily take the majority of your new post-divorce payout. Let's hope she's not too keen. I didn't feel the need to sign it, Charlie implored. Charlie appealed, but he got nowhere. Please, Charlie, do not regurgitate chapter and verse of justifications from the cheater's handbook. You wanted someone else and got him. I refuse to be your backup plan. It is over. Let's not make it too hard for the girls. Sign the paperwork, and in a few years, when the kids are old enough, I'll leave. We'll just have to see each other at weddings and child baptisms. She cried. Then she became enraged. Her lawyer was a bright cookie, and when she saw what I offered, she advised her client to accept the money and live happily ever after, explaining that Charlie approached her because she was one of the finest, and the best were not cheap. I may receive a larger portion of the settlement than you anticipate. Would it be worthwhile? Don't sacrifice your quality of life for a lost cause, Charlie. You cheated twice, and he has paperwork for both. This is not a no-fault state. If you push things, he may commit adultery, and you may wind up with much less while still owing me money. Accept the agreement. She countersued for mental abuse, claiming I had affairs with Shauna and Brenda. Brenda, Bob's ex-wife, threatened to sue her for slander and defamation of character. Shauna showed up at her door and informed her that if she didn't stop, she'd make mistakes on a daily basis. It won't really be me, bitch. I still have a lot of pals from my former unit, and believe me when I say we're a bunch of vicious bitches. I won't even discuss what the boys would do to you. I see many muggings in your future. You might disappear. I've heard that good-looking white girls in third-world nations fetch high prices, and one of my guys has connections. He'd be pleased to help you think with your head rather than your coochie woman while you still have options. She had Charlie backed up a wall, her arm to her throat. One more thing. When this is over, I'll go after him. He's a good man who would never have survived in my previous environment. And that appeals to me. A good, gentle, sturdy man is exactly what I'm seeking for. I'm still young enough to breed, and I bet we'd have lovely chocolate babies. Only warning, bitch. She walked away, leaving Charlie gasping and staring at the expanding stain on the front of her jeans. I did not hear the story until long later. She ceased her actions the next day. I was astonished at work a few weeks later when a woman I didn't know showed up at my office and asked for a few minutes of my time, claiming it was related to my divorce. I had her brought into my office. I turned on the video and audio and used it. When negotiating contracts, I've discovered that vendors and customers occasionally forget important details. She was a really lovely woman who looked my age despite being 10 years older. I got up and shook her hand before strolling over to the couch. Aside from the meeting table, I wanted to make her at ease. I apologize for showing up unannounced, Mr. Sayers. I am Barbara Duncan. I think your wife knows my spouse. It clicked. Charlie got screwed by her husband. I took her hand. Mrs. Duncan has to apologize for my wife's actions, which puts me in an unpleasant position. She shakes her head. I'm quite certain it wasn't your fault, and I know it wasn't mine. It was two adults who, according to what I discovered, had a history of adultery and most likely seduced each other. I came to ask for a favor. It appears that you have pictures and testimony that I could use in my divorce. Would you consider sharing it? Give me your lawyer's name and I'll send it along. She exhaled. I do not have one yet. When it hit the fan, he emptied the accounts, leaving me with barely enough to keep the house and our son clothed. I didn't work, and my future appears grim once more. I found myself in the rare position of cleaning up a mess my wife had made. I dialed a number and asked her to wait. John, I have another client for you, the a-hole's wife. Give me a time and I will send her over. And John, I'll pay. Perhaps you should provide me a discount. What a greedy pick. Here's her number. Text her when you are available. Barbara looked astonished, and I smiled. Don't worry, he's really competent at his profession and I can pay the price. This is the least I can do. You don't know me, but if there's anything else I can do for you, please ask. She replied with a quivering lip. Please do not cry. Please don't. She began crying. I gave her some tissues, let her cry for a while, and assumed Brenda was there right now, and if anyone knew what she was going through, it was her. I called, and she came into the office. Brenda. Barbara, do you two have anything in common? My wife has slept with both of your husbands. I'm only going out for a minute. I gave him 15 minutes. When I stepped back in, both women tackled me to the couch before kissing me. I did not see that coming. I sat, beaming with a distinct shade of lipstick on each cheek. I've been telling Barb what a lovely guy you are and that the divorce is official. I'm coming after you. Don't look astonished. You know you're my hero now. Focus. Barb needs a job until her divorce is finalized. She seemed to be the ideal candidate for the new role. You've been chatting about. She holds a degree in international business relations and speaks French, Italian, and German. I think I found your new international marketing director. You can thank me with a large bonus on my next paycheck. Remember, I'm your chief accountant, so I know how much you can pay her. Do not make me change it. Charlie had a hissy fit. What's up with you? Is this some type of vengeance thing? Are you treating me like garbage while giving those bitches all kinds of supportive goodies? Man, you're angry off. I'd reached my ultimate limit with her. Charlie, you need to shut up. You should stop talking right now. Are you listening? Because if you don't, the offer will be withdrawn and I will force you to battle for every bone you believe I promised you when I married you. That I would spend time supporting ladies whose lives you had destroyed? Hell, I didn't. Charlie, all of this is on you, and I'm finished. Do not speak to me anymore. If you require anything, please contact my lawyer. Do not worry about the girls. They can let me know if they want or need anything. Are you listening to what I am saying? She'd gone back to crying. But honey, I am sure I spoke straight over her. I will tell you what. You can be certain. If you can be certain that the divorce is proceeding, you can be confident that I will be looking for someone else before the ink dries on the paper. The daughters will need a positive female role model, so go ahead and ruin another 2 or 3 marriages. Send the women to me when you're finished destroying the life they thought they had, and I'll do my best to reunite them. Perhaps they can start a club or something. I'm sure they'd allow me to be an honorary member. Lord knows I have the experience. Goodbye, Charlie. I mean it literally. I believe my fury scared her, for she backed up into a corner, eyes wide, and made no sound. I didn't even close the door when I left the girls. Well, the girls despised it. I tried to shield them, but they discovered that they had gone 3 weeks without seeing their mother before I persuaded them to spend the weekend. She is still your mommy. She has not betrayed you, and she still loves you. I am sure it has been killing her. I do not see you. I know it will be difficult, and after a while, if you don't want to stay, get back down. Do it for the family. Darcy, her 11-year-old with ancient eyes, sighed. We will go. But you're mistaken, Father. She betrayed us as much as she did you, cheating us out of a normal family. It'll never be the same. We do stuff with you and her, but we'll never do anything together again. Share collective memories. Love you. Dad. She hugged me and took the longest 26 steps of her little life. Damn that. When did children become so sophisticated and world-weary? I might have to look into a therapist for them, for each of us. It took 11 months and cost her almost $600,000 from the payout before she gave up. She asked for an hour together before signing the documents, so I called her. What could you possibly say that would change things? If you're sorry, I'll accept your apology. Otherwise, sign the paperwork. I'm not going through another round of drama. Darcy was 12.5 and growing into a wonderful beauty. Marissa, now almost 15, resembled a 20-year-old model. People continued to come over for pool and man cave parties, and when the lads arrived, the mothers were like hawks circling their nest. There would be no missing chicks on their watch. Charlie never volunteered to come. I was still paying all of the house costs and planned to continue doing so until the youngest went to college. I modified the petition somewhat. The house would be sold rather than given to Charlie as part of the initial divorce settlement deal. The gains are distributed evenly. Charlie still had enough to live comfortably, provided she was frugal with her money. Brenda, true to her word, came after me before the ink on my divorce papers had dried. I stopped her as gently as could. I would love to, Brenda, but you work for me, and if we don't get along, things may get unpleasant. I'm going to quit. You will receive my resignation. Email takes roughly 5 seconds. I had to laugh. You enjoy your job, and while you're very good, no one will pay you what I do. I could marry a bank. You could, but it would be a long time coming if it happened at all. Please stop. She exhaled. Well, I had to try. And today I wore a thong just for you. Damn, those things are uncomfortable. I gazed at her, trying to determine whether to be horrified or to laugh. She grinned at my expression, reached beneath her skirt, shimmied 3 times, then stepped out and handed me a strip of black lace. Here, a reminder of what you turned down. Damn, it feels nice to get that thing off of me. Think of me. I spent the rest of the day knowing I was a commando under this skirt. She twirled at the entrance, her loose skirt spilling out. I caught a peek of some pretty lovely-looking butt cheeks as she walked out the door, smiling. I stored the thong in my desk drawer. Barbara took the shot. I am not interested in a relationship. I just need to get laid. Seriously laid. I've been buying batteries for almost a year and I'm weary of it. Help a gal out here. I knew she'd be heading to France the next morning. Keep control, Barb. Perhaps you'll meet a Frenchman and fall in love or lust. In any case, a pair of Jean-Claude are out there pining for you. She exhaled. Good goodness, I spoke with Brenda. I am not wearing a thong. Then again, I'm not wearing anything underneath this outfit. Have you any ideas? Tons and tons. No one could leave me alone. I'm still struggling with the fact that I'm actually unmarried. Brenda found another accountant, and they are still crunching numbers. How many minutes can he last? How many orgasms can he give her in possession? So far, things were adding up. Barbara accepted my suggestion. She literally found a Frenchman and relocated to Nice, where she now leads the company's European branch. I stumbled around for almost 9 months. I dated a couple women whom I met through friends and other social events. I discovered that my equipment still worked, but aside from physical pleasure, nothing much happened. Harry and Jean took the best care of me they could. I went over a couple times with the girls and we had a good time. Shauna had left them, stating that while she loved them and Star, it was time to go on. I was disappointed, and they smiled. Charlie got engaged 13 months after her divorce to a man she met via volunteer work. After the news of her affair and divorce broke, the charity she had worked for asked her if she didn't think she could be more valuable somewhere else, and she accepted the hint and departed. I met him a couple times at the mailbox, and he seemed like a great guy. Best of all, he was single when they met, so she avoided breaking up a marriage. I questioned how honest she was about her history, but it was none of my business. The females liked him. He had a sense of humor and did not pretend to be a father figure. He would occasionally take them to the movies or out to dinner while their mother worked. Oddly, I didn't feel threatened and was relieved that they were adjusting. Then they returned home one day looking gloomy, and it all came out in the evening. Josh was no longer part of their lives. He had broken off the engagement. I inquired whether they knew why. "Seriously, Dad, this is Mom. So what do you believe happened?" I'd gotten comfortable enough that I didn't shudder with disgust if I ran into Charlie. I could speak to her in a civil manner, but I did not encourage her. I had removed all of the surveillance equipment a long time ago because it was no longer my business. But I'll admit that when Josh appeared, I was inclined to switch it back on. Did she still make the same looks and sounds that she did when we were intimate? Did she try harder with him? Thankfully, I never felt tempted. 17 months after the divorce, I returned home to find an old buddy seated on my couch. Shauna had arrived in town and went by to see the girls. Marissa was 16, and I had bought her a car to commemorate the occasion, and she was telling her friends everything about it. I never expected her to choose a four-wheel drive Jeep, but it was far safer than the majority of the automobiles teen ladies desired, so I followed along. She and Darcy were very popular at school, and there were always some buddies about them. In this manner, their passes may travel together. Later, I suspected that her decision was heavily influenced by Shauna. When she was younger, she drove a vehicle similar to the one she chose. Darcy came bounding up to me. "Dad, guess where Shauna wants to take us? Camping Star is coming to accompany us. Can we go?" That was surprising. Darcy was about as feminine as it gets, and I couldn't imagine her sleeping on the ground or being dirty. Shauna sat there grinning. I grinned back. "I hadn't seen you in nearly 2 years. And here's how you get back. They kidnapped my children and abandoned me." Her grin widened. "You can come. In fact, I'll probably require assistance." Darcy is allowed 2 friends, Marissa 2 and Star 2. Wrangling 9 girls aged 10 to the 16th of May be more than I can handle. I doubt there is anything you cannot handle. You'll have them organized as if they were in boot camp. I do not think you will have any problems. Come with us, Daddy. We'll need someone to transport things and prepare meals. You don't expect us to do it for you right now. We will be on vacation. My oldest daughter smirked as she finished. "I detect a plot here. Okay, make arrangements. I got a huge backlog of time coming. It could be beneficial to burn some. Are you going to bring the white thong, bikini, Shauna?" Shauna, the warrior, genuinely flushed. "Not this trip. I'll probably be a touch more PG because it's a group of young females. I don't want people to see you perving on me all weekend." My turn to blush. "Set it up. I will try not to perv around my daughters." They giggled, and I left to order pizza while they huddled over Darcy's laptop, looking at high-end camping gear. I had a hunch this would cost me a lot. Shauna checked in every 2 or 3 days until the trip to see what they had bought and if they needed to carry anything. She forced them take down and erect the 3 tents until they could do it blindfolded. Star was often with her, demonstrating that she had inherited her parents' intelligence and her mother's beauty. I hadn't spoken to Charlie in a few months. She had various men over, and she always sent the girls to me on the nights she had dates. I couldn't help but think she wasn't a good role model right now, but the girls were really cool about it. Then one day she called and asked to talk to me about the girls. My alarm system went off. This cannot be good news. I met her at the front door. She moved straight to what was on her mind. "Stop turning my girls against me. I'm sick of hearing about Shauna. She is capable of doing this. That is within her capabilities. She is blah, blah, blah. If you're banging that bitch, stay it away from my girls." It took me a second to find my voice. It took a little longer than that to become calm enough to speak reasonably. First, I laughed, since this came from a woman who has had a string of lovers in recent months. "Do you think the girls are naive enough to believe you are playing backgammon all night?" Damn, Charlie. What a hypocrite. By the way, I am not banging her. But you know what? Even if I were, it wouldn't be your problem. I have tried to stay out of your business, Charlie, so keep out of mine. You look like trash. The words rode hard and put up comes to mind. Bring your buttocks back to the gym. Get your hair done. Take care of yourself. For the girls, at least. Is there anything else on your mind? So, have a very dazzling, shiny day and leave me alone. I left her stunned and in tears, which topped off the cake that Shauna drove up. Just then, I startled her by embracing her and kissing her passionately. She was stunned at first, but before I knew it, that muscular body was crushed up against me, and her tongue was halfway down my throat. We were interrupted by the sound of clapping and a slammed door. The applauding came from the girls who ran out as they saw Shauna pull up. It was nice to see Miss Super in control blush. Why did you do that? I grinned because I always do, and believe me, it goes beyond any fantasy I've ever had about you. And honestly, I wanted to do it for the shock value for certain individuals. And I'd really like to do it again to ensure that the feeling I had was not a fluke. She grabbed me and drew me to her as she kissed me again. When we broke up, I startled her by nibbling her neck and leaving a minor hickey. The girls dragged her inside, giggling wildly while I followed them and turned up the grill. They came out with the salads, and I plated their steaks and baked potatoes. She would massage her neck sometimes, eyeing me through hooded eyes. They ran back in after dinner, leaving me to cope with the mess. It was dark by the time I finished, and Shauna returned alone. A 5-minute makeout session ensued. Her fingers traced the front of my shorts, and I almost lost it as she grabbed my erection. "Nice," she murmured as she turned to leave. She hesitated at the gate. "You shouldn't have kissed me because now that I know you want me to. It's game on, big boy, and you better be prepared. Do not try running. Does it appear that I am running?" I dashed across the yard and grabbed her again, stunning her by pulling her up off her feet, giving her one more kiss and sweating on her butt cheek. She leaped, smirking. "That was nice. Please, sir, could I have another?" I think I swallowed 3 bugs while watching those lovely hips move across the driveway. When I got inside, the girls were all over me. "Back off, babies. I have no idea what I'm doing or where we're headed with this. Let me attempt to comprehend this before we discuss it." They smirked and strolled around all week, humming the wedding march. I double-checked everything on the list Shauna gave me. How can something that took so long to plan be enjoyable? Shauna had Star and 2 pals in her 4-wheel drive. Marissa's group included her 2 friends, Darcy and her companions. It was pretty packed. I was driving one of the company trucks, and the bed was full with the gear support vehicle. According to Shauna, it took us 4 hours to get to our destination, but it was worthwhile. We were totally isolated. It would take about 30 minutes to drive to the bathhouses. If they had to leave before then, they would have to perform a bear imitation. Shauna took over barking instructions, and tents rose from the ground. I was tasked with organizing the foodstuff into bear-proof containers, which did not make me feel warm and fuzzy. The coolers would be locked in the vehicles at night, and Shauna had bear repellent. She sprays liberally around the scene and in the vehicles. Then I had to build the charcoal BBQ we had brought with us. We had everything squared away around lunchtime. Lunch was cold sandwiches and drinks, with the girl grinning and staring at the lake as they put on bathing suits. I drove back to the marina, got the keys to the largest pontoon boat they had, and received an hour of instruction. It was massive and intended to hold 18 adults, so I figured 9 girls and 2 adults wouldn't put a strain on it. I returned to find 9 girls and 1 woman lying around in blankets and bathing costumes, soaking up the sun. I stared at them, realizing how much my babies had grown and how quickly my time with them was passing. Marissa would be going to college in 2 years. Darcy was not long following, and my nest would be completely empty. As the blood began to flow from my head, I noticed Shauna lying on her stomach with her string thong top undone. I considered whether it would be less empty if I followed my emotions. I sat down beside her, and she said hello, handed me some lotion, and told me to massage her back. Her skin felt unexpectedly soft and supple. I did her back, and she flicked her long black hair out, or her eyes smiled and ordered me to do the remainder of her. "You have no idea how much I want to do it, but we have an audience, so I believe I'll let you do it." She looked over and saw 9 girls watching, the older ones grinning. She moaned and sat up, tying her top. It was almost as nerve-wracking to see her apply lotion as it would have been for me to do it. I instantly concluded that a plunge in the cool waters of the lake was exactly what I needed. Shauna smirked and Marissa and her pals smiled as I dove into the water. I cooked for them while they were playing. Shauna had brought some physically demanding activities and they yelled and ran until they were exhausted. We fed them and then led them back to the bathhouses. I had a shower and then had to sit outside on a bench for hours while 11 females went through their bedtime routines. They were nodding in the trucks, and we nearly had to carry some of them to the tents. When Star kissed me goodnight and addressed me as Uncle Jack, every girl followed suit. Every female followed suit, and I received 9 really wonderful, sweet kisses. Then they did the same thing with Shauna, and soon every girl was kissing Aunt Shauna. We expected them to stay awake, but the exercise had served its purpose, and they were all out in 30 minutes with a snoring in each tent. Shauna and I walked out to the lake with some chairs and sat in the moonlight, enjoying the peace. I had put a couple of bottles of wine into one of the coolers, and we shared one bottle while sipping from plastic cups. Shauna must have had a long day since she fell asleep halfway through the second cup. She was a substantial lump of muscle, and I couldn't carry her. I gently shook her, but she did not respond. I bent over to chat into her ear without waking up the girls, but the chance was too good. So I nibbled her neck, laying delicate kisses on her shoulder blades, which were exposed in her short little sundress. She murmured quietly, and I felt her move. She turned her head and kissed me softly and gently, relishing the moment when she pulled back, smiling and stroking my cheek. "You can wake me up like that whenever you want, honey. Now help me up. We need to hit the rack. Those females will wake us up at the crack of dawn." She reached out her hand and refused to let go. As we headed back to the tent, I paused outside, realizing there was only one tent. Shauna noticed my hesitation and tugged gently. "It's only for sleep, Jack. When I get started, I can be rather noisy, and I have no intention of causing harm to 9 young minds." I was even more shocked to discover a double-height queen-size air mattress with 2 sleeping bags open and zipped together. "I sleep on my left side," she explained, as she turned off the lantern. I heard a rustling sound and recognized it as her dress hitting the floor. She was wearing only a little pair of white bikini panties. She slid inside and pushed back the blanket. "Are you coming?" I didn't hesitate to drop my shorts and slide in alongside her in my boxers. She gave me a short kiss, turned over, spooned me, dragged my arm over her tummy, nestled till she was comfortable, and then passed out. It took a long because I had to melt the iron bar in my boxers, but sleep eventually came. I awoke to giggling while still spooned to her. Shauna sighed, arching back into me and firmly holding my hand where it had been before giggling. She reached down and took my morning. "What if we were alone? I know how to deflate that monster, but I'm surrounded by young girls like us." "You're on your own, but hurry up. I think I hear stomach churning. We need to make breakfast." I crawled out a few minutes later and Darcy showed me the crude bathroom hidden behind the tree line that I had no idea about. It was impolite but adequate, and Shauna had the foresight to bring a large jug of water and sterilizing soap. I was quite excellent at grilling, but Shauna took over breakfast, giving tasks to the older sisters. Soon the sound of sausage frying filled the room as I cut peppers, onion, and ham for omelets. Shauna produced the largest cast-iron frying pan I'd ever seen, heated oil, and created the finest pancakes I'd ever had with buckwheat flour and fresh blueberries. We ate a lot, and then Shauna made them all help clean up, wash the dishes, pick up the garbage, and pack away the utensils and food so it looked like we hadn't been there. Shauna took out a couple of rods, strolled out to the lake with each girl in tow, and showed them how to fish. There were a lot of little bream in the cove, so everyone caught something. Endless pictures were taken, and the girls made it clear that we would be visiting somewhere like Academy or Dick's very soon. We lazed around until almost lunchtime. When we got back to the marina, Shauna made them wear sneakers and cover their bikinis with shorts and tees. They assumed it was because we took them to the marina restaurant for lunch. Surprisingly, they served Italian cuisine with platters of spaghetti, ravioli, massive meatballs, and other various meals being shared. Little girls could really put it away. We had them walk down to the piers and see the vessels. There were several squeals when they realized the big one was for them, and they stormed on board, wailing when Shauna forced them to put on life vests. "We have a student driver," she remarked, smiling at me. It's best not to take any chances. We moved it around carefully until everyone was comfortable. The jackets and garments were removed, leaving only swimsuits on the walls. The older girls drew a lot of attention from passing boaters, and one inebriated guy cried, "Show your tits!" I thought Shauna was going to go crazy after that. The female simply laughed. "Relax, honey. I was a hormonal teen once, and you were two a lot younger than me. They're simply having fun. If they get close again, they're all yours." She paused for a moment before proceeding to the next deck. I heard hoops booming over the lake, and she returned happy, fixing her top. I never spoke a word. We anchored in a cove, and I discovered the boat's coolest feature, a sliding board that launched you into the water off the side of the boat, with a small pump keeping water on the board to make things easier. They soon took off two at a time, shrieking as they flew. One tiny child held back, and it came out. She could not swim. The others were compassionate enough to offer to halt a quite adult behavior for children. So young. But Shauna rescued the day. She took the girl to the rear and returned a few minutes later, wearing a life vest. Shauna ascended the ladder with her, and they set off together. I'm not sure who was screaming more, Shauna or Vicky. The cove was shallow with a good small beach, and we banged the shore when they got tired, tying it off, gathering firewood and pulling out the cooler, and they were soon toasting wieners and marshmallows while drinking sodas. Shauna had Vicky out to the side, softly chatting to her, and a few minutes later, I looked up to see Vicky dog paddle past me. We sat on the boat afterward, our feet dangling side by side. When I reached over and kissed her on the cheek, her smile shone brightly in the dim light. What was that for? For assisting Vicky. You're going to be an excellent mother. Tears welled in her eyes, and she leaped from the boat, swimming out into the cove and gazing out at the channel. When she eventually arrived, I assisted her in wrangling the girls, cleaning up our mess, extinguishing the fire, and gently motoring back to the pier. Did I do anything to hurt your feelings? If I did, please understand that I did not intend to do so, and sincerely apologize. She touched my cheek with a sweet grin. You said nothing wrong, honey. You just offered me a compliment I've never received before. I simply didn't know how to process it. She leaned into me from the back, grasping my arm. I couldn't recall the last time I felt so content. The kids moaned when we returned until we told them we had it for 3 days. They were still babbling eagerly when we stopped to take showers. On our trip back to camp, the girls prepared a light meal and insisted Shauna and I relax. So we sat in camp chairs and got pampered. Shauna spoke about her new work. She co-owned a security company with 3 other veterans and appeared to be doing well, though she didn't enjoy the unpredictable hours and travel as much as she thought she would. I didn't mind telling her I was selling the company. It surprised her. The whole affair started when I was just trying to help a friend. Ari and June really coerced me into it. They are nice, loyal friends, but I didn't enjoy it very much and money didn't matter much to me. I only wanted enough to offer a good life for my family and eventually for my daughters. She moaned and took my hand. I understand you don't show it, but Charlie damaged you more than you let on. I was married once before. I loved the guy and felt he was my life partner until I returned from a deployment and discovered he was divorcing me for what I thought was a good friend while she was 6 months pregnant. At least he had the decency to wait until I arrived home, but it still hurt. I was a bit surprised. It was the first time she had addressed it, and it made me sad. Charlie had taught me a lot about channeling suffering so that I could comprehend. We relaxed in the chairs until dinner was served. I was relieved that my daughters had learned how to use a grill, because the majority of the others had no idea. Shauna and I washed up while the girls sang around the fire, accompanied by one of Marissa's friends on guitar. It did not sound awful. Sitting in the dark with no one else to assess your abilities. We tried to wear the pontoon out, but the girls were adamant on both birthday presents. When we combine these, we get one of our own. I did not object to the suggestion at all. Shauna and I shared a bed for 3 more nights, sleeping in our underpants. The girls were practically frantic on the final day, attempting to fit in as much fun as possible. It left them so exhausted that they collapsed like rocks after dinner, not even attempting to sit up around the fire. Shauna kissed me and said, "Come to bed and I'll let you finish the massage." I was on the bed before she finished speaking. I don't have the willpower to wait anymore. You need to love me right now. My body was more than willing, but I still had enough brain cells receiving blood to inquire about the girls present, exhausted. You could probably march a brass band through right now and they wouldn't even roll over. In addition, we plan to be calm and gentle. I will shake your world when we are alone. Now drop those boxers I touched. I rubbed as she sighed in gratitude. It was pleasant and slow. We sank back limply and weary. She curled in even more and dozed asleep. I thought I heard her say, "I love you," but I couldn't be sure. I laid in that tent in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by tiny girls, and realized I was the happiest I'd been in a long time, so I went to sleep smiling. The girls woke us up, and after a great kiss, we dressed and walked out to face the world. Marissa, Darcy, and the rest of the females wore smug grins, and I knew there were no secrets in the tent. As we prepared our final lunch, I looked at Shauna and enjoyed her flush. After everything was packed, we glanced around to make sure we left the camp in better condition than we found it. And then we went, taking memories that would last a lifetime. Marissa drove Shauna's SUV, another girl drove hers, and Shauna rode with me, all of which I'm sure was planned. We drove holding hands, feeling no need to communicate. Shauna eventually talked an hour after leaving home. I've been thinking about this for years. Truth be told, we could go home, date, and dance around our feelings for each other, but I'll cut to the chase and give you some possibilities. You'll love me. You'll marry me. You will give me other children to love than the stars and our girls. And this is an absolute necessity. You will live the rest of your life with me. If you oppose to any of this, I'll get in my car. When we come back, drive away and you'll never see me again. Oh, and by the way, I do adore you. What are your thoughts on the situation? Okay, let me think. Okay, I figured we'd go to the jeweler's tomorrow and find you a ring, after which we, or rather you, would go house searching. I refuse to begin married life in my ex's basement. So the sooner you find our place, the faster we can begin housekeeping. When it comes to narrowing down your options, you may wish to confer with the females. Agreed. Oh, and just to be formal, Shauna Hunter, will you marry me? She only sat there for a few seconds before the tears began. Then the tears gave place to a smug expression. She texted someone and instructed me to pull over. Right now. I assumed the girl driving Marissa's Jeep was going to wreck. She pulled over so quickly. Shauna leaped out of the truck, raced around, and pulled me out before I could leave on my own. And as 9 females danced and yelled around us, she gave me the most fulfilling kiss of my life. Marissa was still holding her phone, and I looked down to see that the message operation had been completed successfully. Well done, troops. When I looked at her, she grinned, flaming crimson. Oops, you weren't supposed to see that, she added, hugging me again. I sighed as I closed my computer, knowing I was 60 today, my last day of work before retirement. I had made a lot of money, and it was time Darcy proved herself to be a math and business whiz. So after earning her MBA, she began working for Harry, coming over 3 years ago to study the firm from the ground up, before she took over as CEO of a multinational corporation. Marissa followed in my footsteps and earned an engineering degree specialized in bridge construction, a vocation that took her all over the world. She had found a life partner, and they had adopted 2 little girls, my sole grandchildren to date. Darcy remained married to her profession, despite the fact that she appeared to be quite close to an engineer she met through her sister. My musings were interrupted when my wife entered with our twin daughters. They were about to graduate from high school and had decided to attend various institutions in order to live their lives as individuals for once. Shauna was correct as always. She assured Charlie that we will make lovely chocolate babies. Shauna withdrew from the field on the day we married and took over management of her company, selling her part to others when she discovered she was pregnant. Our company was nearly their sole client. Harry's empire had grown enormously, and the facts they discovered frequently influenced business choices dramatically. She assisted me in packing away the pictures on my desk, pausing at one of our wedding images, which included her with her bridal party. June is the matron of honor, with 9 bridesmaids who are 316, 313, and 310 years old, all dressed elegantly and beautifully in floor-length dresses, holding up their gowns, displaying combat boots, and holding a sign that reads, "Operation Successful." We were about to retire to our lakefront home, the same lake where we had tented years before. There were 2 massive pontoons and a speedboat attached to the docks, and all of the youngsters from that trip returned frequently, bringing their own families and reciting the story of the lake's operation, as they called it. I doubted we'd have much privacy, but that was fine. What happened to Charlie? Not that I cared, save for how it affected my children, but she got the house to say she was dissatisfied, which was a true remark, but she soon realized her rant was going unheard and gave up. What really burned her was when a house came up for sale a block away, and Shauna decided that was where we would start our family. $500,000 later, she had a show house that was published in a magazine. It had a full-size in-ground pool and a hot tub, which we used for virtually the whole first year. Custody was never an issue because the girls lived within walking distance of each other, but they preferred to stay with us most of the time, especially after their sisters were born. After all, they were nearly adults by then. Charlie has remarried twice. The first failed after 2 years because, unsurprisingly, she was caught cheating. Fortunately, she was astute enough to obtain a prenup, so she was protected simply for the sake of it. Brenda and Barb tracked down the wife and gave her a job. I hear the second one is an open arrangement, and they use the basement as a playroom, so she may have gotten what she wanted all those years ago. We see her occasionally, but she does not speak, still holding a grudge. Time has not been kind to her, and her age is beginning to show. Old habits die hard, I suppose, and she still prefers them all over the gym dad. Hurry up. If we start now, we can still spend an hour or 2 on the lake. I smiled, picked up my box, and walked out with my family to begin the happiest chapter of my life.